Coming up next on Landscapes Through Time, artist David Dunlop travels to the ancient olive groves in Renoir's garden in the south of France.
How does it happen that the nervous son of a humble tailor up near Paris should end up commanding millions for his artwork, should end up one of the most famous names around the globe in art? This is Pierre Auguste Renoir. Was it a coincidence of right place, right time? Did he have some particular revelation? Was it his color sensitivity, rare among his peers? I'm David Dunlop, and I'm here with some of my students. We're going to set our easels up around Les Colettes, a farm he bought here on the southern coast of France, just above Nice, as we seek the sources of his inspiration, his ideas, and try to find our way to the heart of Renoir. He buys this property as an older man in 1906, and he'll stay here his final 13 years until 1919 when he dies here. Renoir moved into this studio after Aline, his wife, and her architect designed the building for him, and he liked it. This north light was perfect for him. It's the light that Cézanne prefers. It's the light that Da Vinci prefers. For someone who paints nudes and still lifes, this is perfect. What wasn't perfect was his body. This wheelchair is evidence of that. He suffered terribly from rheumatoid arthritis the last years of his life. He couldn't place the brush in his own hand. He couldn't mix his own paints. He had Gabrielle, his wife Aline's cousin, do that, and she served as his model, posing over there. He still kept an ebullient, hopeful attitude. He still looked forward to painting. These are his tubes of paint, his brushes, his paint box. His heart is big, and it shows in the sweetness of all his painting. Renoir stands here at Les Colettes painting this scene. He frames his scenes with these ancient olive trees. This is a man who was a conservationist at heart, an affection for nature and for people. His affection for color also was something that was lifelong. He starts out as a young boy painting porcelain plates. He's painting designs. This is just before painting on porcelain is taken over by a mechanical system. Once that happened, the young Renoir would be out of a job. But his talent was obvious, and there were those who encouraged him to go and apply to the L'École des Beaux-Arts, the prestigious art school in Paris. And from there he would go to Charles Glaire's studio in the 1860s, where he would meet Monet, Sisley, and Bazille, the foundation set of Impressionists. This group of friends found the studio system stifling. Their agenda was out here, in front of nature. Painting in the old system, let me show you some of these. Sharp focus, careful modeling, fairly limited in color. That's exactly what they were reacting to. That's what they did not want to paint like. And photography was obviating the need for this kind of painting. Off they go to Barbizon, to the Forest Fontainebleau. There Renoir meets Diaz, one of the Barbizon painters of Millet, Daubigny, Rousseau, Corot. Diaz had told him, you don't have to use such a conservative, dark palette. You can keep going to a brighter and brighter palette, which he does. They still painted in an old tradition. This is a Clodion painting, and this is from the 1600s. There's a coulisse here, a structure where we've got a tree, a group of foliage on one side, and a distance over here framed by a smaller tree. And we kind of zigzag through the distance. And that brings you into the painting. That's the same setting that's here. So even if the Impressionists simplify the ideas of these 16, and they do, because instead of a coulisse reaching all the way up, we still have a big mass on one side. There's what's called a little small echo. Just like there was a small one here, it's the reverse. And then there's our river, and it does the serpentine zigzag. The ground, while it's not 1/3 down here, it's close to 1/3 up here. So we're not in the middle. There's the middle. Just like this avoids the middle, this avoids the middle. Keeps them from being immobile. And look, the light is coming out of this circular territory here. And you can see there's the Claudian circle. So he just is simplifying older traditions. Monet and Renoir would do this painting of La Grenouillère side by side, and here they are trying something people hadn't done before to get the feeling of light on contemporary subjects, subjects of their own choosing. The middle class at play along the Seine. Together, they invent Impressionism. This system of placing touches of paint which turn into light, and the light assembled, all these touches assembled, when you stand back, make a picture. Renoir, like other Impressionists, would do some quick sketches beforehand. They're not the elaborate sketches of someone like Corot a generation before, but that's because they weren't printmakers and draftsmen. I've got the frame happening over here, and it's just to get a cursory idea of a design, a very simple design, around which all the loose strokes could work, and then coarse color, which interestingly is how we see coarse color filling in territories. There, I've got a sketch, an idea, just a loose map, because looseness is an essential ingredient for making painting like this. Let's go to the color. Cadmium was new and was used by Impressionists. Renoir does something a little different than Monet. He sometimes alters a color by adding black. Monet completely banned black from his palette by the time we were in the late 1870s, 1880s. Here's the alizarin crimson, and he'll do this with blues as well. Here is a black, and he will deepen this carmine-like black and the red together. You get a shade when you add black. They all love the emerald green, which was a newer color. There wasn't cadmium red until 1911 or so. White, I'm going to put some ultramarine blue up over here. Cobalt blue, which had been available since 1810. A burnt sienna, a raw sienna, and a Naples yellow running into the emerald green. I'll just put a violet up here for you. And I'm also going to lower this to grab the picture so a gust of wind doesn't create a sail. Now he had several ways of laying the paint down. One, little daubs, and it's one I'm not personally comfortable with, but it was a manner of his, and I want to show it to you. He'll put buttons of color around, and then he'll blur them together, smearing them like that. Little territories of color then smeared. He's also conscious of the color complement cycle. He keeps Delacroix's journals under his bed. If you're looking at bright sunlight, the shadows are blue and violet. That's happening in your eye and brain. That yellow-white creates fatigue in your cones, and we see a resulting blue-violet in the shadows. So if he were to take this cadmium yellow and mix it here and then offset it with a violet, each color makes the other color stronger. He notices something else, too, from Delacroix and from Michel Chevreul, who had written about color and the principles of harmony and contrast. And that is that if I take a dark color and create a territory around a space, and a light color around a space, this contrast between dark and light makes this light seem brighter, and this contrast, which is less, makes this light seem less light. Also, the bigger the territory is in the middle, the less light it is. We pay attention to the edges. Now that's a principle of successive contrast, something that the Impressionists would exploit just as they did complementary contrast. He's not afraid of some of the browns. These are pieces of sculpture, these ancient olive trees. They are so magnificent. I feel that watching it, just as it watched Renoir 100 years ago, painted this place. Full of gesture and freedom. I too am going to put blues in the shadows. Mixing white into the colors is making tints, and that's one thing the Impressionists were known for, making tints. and they were unafraid of green. Painters before them were reluctant to use so much green. In fact, Constable had been criticized for it. But Renoir, when he went to London after the Franco-Prussian War, he served in the war. He finds his friend Monet and he finds Pissarro there up in London, and he sees in the landscapes of Turner, of Constable, greens they'd never seen in paintings before. It's like I have a little orchestrina with these birds around me. Now, Renoir paints lots of people, more than any other impressionist. He loves painting nudes. His women are beautiful and sweet. There is a sweetness to his work. See the violet and the yellow? This is a color complement. I'm just trying to keep his kind of theory of color complement afloat here while we're painting. It's those loose edges that give us volume and color vibration. Now, with Impressionists painting in oil, they would often have to wait to apply the next layer. They're not alla prima paintings. They're painted in the studio as well as outside the studio. Renoir, in fact, will take a landscape of some place and superimpose a figure on top of that landscape from his studio, as if you were standing for a photograph in front of a fake background. But it was a background he had observed. And that's an older technique, something that Barbizon painters had been doing, like Millet. Loose, loose, and free. Because they're after the idea of a glimpse, of a fleeting glimpse, a single moment with some kinetic activity. Nothing is precise, nothing is static. He has a period of his life where his brushstrokes get more constrained, but after moving here, and especially in the final years, there's a real freedom in some of the quick little landscapes he's done, something that shows a lack of inhibition, a self-assurance that you only see in an older master painter. Impressionist painting requires the viewer to assemble the picture, not from coming up close, because this is how we see. We assemble vision. It's all a swirl of chaos that we give meaning and identity to, and we do that when we step back on one of their paintings. One of the artists that he admired the most was Manet, and Manet said 90% of the painting is without a brush in your hand. It's back here, thinking, not up there. An Impressionist painting is assembled in your mind here, and as you approach it, it disassembles, it deconstructs. And it's almost as if miraculously it reassembles as you come back. That's what happens with the broken edges, because everything out here has broken edges, but we assemble them, we smooth them and amalgamate them and identify them and name the shapes. That's how we think. Impressionists tried to show us how we see. For a long time, Renoir follows the Impressionist path. Then somehow in the late 1870s and 80s, his allegiance to Impressionism and his role in starting Impressionism would haunt him, because he thought he may have taken a wrong turn away from classical painting. Here's a man who was poor as a young Impressionist, and he was looking for acceptance, looking to gain some recognition, always wanting to be shown in the salon with the establishment. The fact that he'd been refused so many times gave him some self-doubt. So there he is in mid-career, he turns around and starts turning into some sort of follower of Raphael. He wants sharp edges, sharp lines, outlines, and moves completely away from that Impressionist base, much to the dismay of his dealer, Durand Ruel, because those Impressionist landscapes were starting to really sell. He later apologizes to Monet. When you're trying to compromise what pleases you with what pleases others, you can end up with some failed paintings, just as you can end up with some successful paintings. And Renoir, of course, produces both. When you're a landscape painter and you're an impressionist, the standard is to paint no more than an hour at a time. The weather changes everything, the light is always changing, and it changes so much that within 1 hour you're no longer looking at the same place. You're looking at a new set of colors and textures. The shapes may be the same. It's pinks against greens, violets against yellows and greens. Here's a light blue-green. Let me put it over here so you can see its color. Pastel tones are made by using white. And that's what they're known for. What started out here as a sunny day is turning into something a little bit darker. I'm trying to use those deep, rich reds now of his, put in shadows as he might have quickly just spotted them. There's a tapestry of colors that are laid down one on top of the other, so that opposite colors are juxtaposed. Rather than painting in a mat of all blue, they actually overlay and overlay, like I'm doing here, colors to create effects, optical effects, so that the sky has a hum. And so does the landscape. The brave strokes, they were indebted to people like Velázquez, Frans Hals, Rubens, because they had seen courageous strokes and had found them exciting. Their desire not to paint in the studio, but to paint in front of nature, sur le motif, as they called it, was fortuitous in history because science had given them, technology had given them paint in tubes, making painting outside easier, and portable easels. And they have more color than anyone in history. By the mid to late 19th century, new colors are coming onto the market all the time. There are so many new colors that would excite them and brighten their palette. Our impressionists keep layering, layering. Now, with oils, they will get muddy if you keep layering, so you need it to dry, come back another day at the same time. Renoir was lucky he lived here, so it was easy to come back. The idea is that you create something that is not static, that it is rough, that the viewer assembles. Now I'm going to take the tape off of this to see how my oil sketch, a sort of esquisse, as they would have called it, looked. I also want to go see what one of my students is doing. He has a view over the Mediterranean through this same olive grove, while I've been looking at the old medieval city, a view Renoir liked here, but he liked the view over there as well. Whoa, Max!
Hi, Dave.
This is a Clodian scene. This is the oculus. And from my view, I used the olive trees to give an arch on one side. You're framing on two sides. You did the right thing, one more, one less. Through this ancient oculus, the eye. And then we see the scene. Chinese painters, ancient Sung Dynasty painters will use this. Human beings, it's a pre-attentive thing. Even young infants, they recognize the circle. It's a way of organizing the shape. I love what's happening in here. It's as though I'm time traveling. I feel antiquity in here, as though I were a Roman walking through a vineyard. I love that sensation. Textures are beautiful. I would do something to make the shapes a little more dynamic, because they're just, see, these are tracking parallel.
Oh,
you want
yeah.
a little more variety. too straight. Let's just see if we can give these olive trees a little more knot and twist.
Okay, here you go.
And not touch the background, which is extraordinary and wonderful. And again, you're working sort of monochromatically, right?
Yeah.
How many colors have we got?
2 and a white. An ultramarine for the blue. A red oxide is the red.
And you've got this beautiful gray.
Is mixing them together.
Well, if I draw with the back end of my brush and see what kind of possibilities I could have, just to try to make the shapes more interesting in terms of their dynamic character. I don't want them to be equal, so I don't want this and this to be equal, so I'll make the bottom do a little gnarly thing, and then this a bigger thing before it twists off. And then this is a little too smooth, a little too much like a church door right here. I think I would soften some of that edge. Sorry to obliterate some of your splendid textures, but
There's nothing without good shape.
texture's nothing without good shape. Gotta have a shape. Looking for character along that shape, just character. Because, like music or poetry or theater, the personality is often expressed in the twist of the shape. For Chinese artists, the calligraphy is all about an interesting set of shapes. And you do it quickly and confidently, and you'll get more interesting shapes than doing it hesitatingly and slowly. So even if it's the wrong shape, you could scrape it out and do it again.
And you're putting bigger, longer strokes in the front.
Yes, a little higher contrast. Now to come in on here with some of that texture, see this? See how that looks leafish?
Just like leaves.
You just want a texture that suggests leaves. You don't have to paint them all by going blinky, blink, blink. You just want to suggest their presence. And again, I don't want them to be regular either. I don't want a regular pattern. Part of this form is closed, and part of this form is open, in other words, porous. That's more interesting than it all being closed or all locked like this is. We'll just give this a little more character right there. See how those grasses being a little bigger
Yeah, so everything come forward.
helps things come forward. And that makes them go back in an interesting way. And I'll twirl the brush do you see how I just twirl the brush? I'm going to go into with my finger with a little medium on this, because as you know, Titian,
I need a brush.
yeah, Titian, Rembrandt, Turner, Da Vinci, the fingers. They use the fingers. And that's going to give me a chance to get some of this exotic texture. I'm going to bring this shape down. The brain tends to smooth things out, round things out. And it's more exciting if we don't quite. And so I'm going to come down and cut in a shape here. See how it's more exciting if we don't do that? And of course, groups of threes, we don't want 2 eyes and a mouth, because we find light floating around up in there.
It's one of the hardest things, I think, grouping the light spots through the trees.
Don't make them the same size. Vary them and blur them. Give them a feeling of randomness. See how the sizes vary in here?
Yeah, that's very nice.
Maybe another little twist in here, just to get some of that variety again, so we get some motion. Now, see how they're thorny and twisting and turning?
Yeah, that looks great.
Now, you didn't paint in Renoir's style, but you used the same kind of basic organization Renoir used.
Been using that for a long time.
Long time, since Roman times, and especially since the 17th century. You made your optical neutral with?
Yeah, it's just the 2 colors mixed to make a gray instead of a black and a white. So it has warmth and cools and...
It shows you the range just with the 2 colors. And of course, that's the tradition. Use something that's much more monochromatic, but build your textures, shapes, and people feel the sweep, power, and infinity of immeasurable space of landscape. Limiting the palette makes volumetric space, deep space, more possible. More color, the flatter the space. Persian miniatures, very flat space. More monochromatic color palettes like Renaissance paintings, Correggio, Da Vinci, great space.
The depth.
Great space, and you're using basically their palette. I'm going to take some tape off. Let's step back and see how it looks a few feet away.
Okay.
like the Impressionists.
Yeah.
But also like every landscape painter who's ever touched brush or finger to canvas. You gotta step back.
That looks great.
It does. It was great collaborating with you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Renoir gave us more than Impressionism. Probably the most inspirational gift. The life that was overwhelmed at times by poverty, overwhelmed by physical pain and debility, could still find happiness, still find contentment, still find purpose in passion through art. I'm David Dunlop. I'm a landscape painter.
For more information about Landscapes Through Time with David Dunlop, please visit daviddunlop.com. On the next Landscapes Through Time, artist David Dunlop follows the path of the American Impressionists in Giverny, France, home of Claude Monet.